Good evening, and welcome to the June 7th, 2022 Special City Council Meeting Budget Workshop. I'll now call the meeting to order. And we'll now have the Pledge of Allegiance, and I'll call on Councilmember Sandra Masalabit for that, please.
Ready to begin? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Acting City Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Mayor Kalnick,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Verapapa,
Here.
Councilmember Masalavit,
Here.
Councilmember Sistarsik,
Here.
Councilmember Moore,
Here.
all present.
Thank you very much. Now time for oral communications. At this time, members of the public may address the council regarding any items within the subject matter jurisdiction of the City Council. Pursuant to the Brown Act, the council cannot discuss or take action on any items not on the agenda unless authorized by law. Matters not on the agenda may, at the council's discretion, be referred to the city manager and placed on a future agenda. Those members of the public wishing to speak are asked to come forward to the microphone, state their name for the record. All speakers will be limited to a period of 5 minutes. Speakers must address their comments only to the mayor and entire city council, not to any individual member of the staff or audience. Any documents for review should be presented to the city clerk for distribution. Acting City Clerk, do we have any supplemental communications?
No email comments were received. However, we did receive one PowerPoint that was received after the posting of the agenda that was just distributed to City Council and made available to the public.
Okay, thank you. Anyone wishing to speak, please come forward.
Good evening. It is nice to see you all again. My name is Michelle Newman. My family and I have lived here in College Park East for over 20 years. Thank you and your staff for convening this follow-up budget meeting workshop. Last week, staff presented you and the community their draft budget for the 2022-2023 fiscal year. Needless to say, we all had many questions regarding their initial recommendations. Inasmuch as these meetings are meant to provide transparency, so the community understands where and how our tax dollars are spent, there are also an opportunity for us, your constituents, to provide input on what we feel the city's priorities should be. On this point, I and others are concerned we are not being heard. Let me explain. In February of this year, an email to this body signed by over 100 College Park East residents made the point that parks and open space are a tangible reflection of the quality of life in a community, and asked why College Park East parks have been so neglected. That same email asked why practically none of the recommended improvements in the 2013 Parks and Community Services Master Plan had been made, despite the fact that the city had allocated resources to complete much of the work. The allocated resources I am referring to are the $477,000. That is a lot of money. Those funds may not cover all of the cost of the recommended improvements, but they would provide a nice start towards beautifying and upgrading our facilities. If not now, then when? How much more dust must that report collect before this council takes it off the shelf and begins to act on it? Heather Park, College Park East's largest and busiest park, has had the same unsightly porta potty standing in the same location for more than 15 years. What kind of statement does that send to your constituents? Less than a week ago in this very room, you heard from residents that specifically chose to raise their families in college in Seal Beach. They chose this community for its small town feel. They feel welcomed here. We have good schools they feel safe sending their children to. But they also told you that they were embarrassed by the deteriorating condition of our parks and take their kids to other communities to recreate. Last month, after reviewing the initial draft of this budget, I emailed Councilmember Sistarsik asking what plans does this city have for the $500,000 earmarked to College Park East that could be used for the rehabilitation and restoration of our parks. And I got crickets. While costs rise and materials continue to be hard to come by, these dollars are still not dedicated to any substantive park improvements. What is the holdup? We have the right to an honest answer. We have the right to know why. I'll close my remarks in the same fashion I did last week. If a budget is a statement of values, this city seems to have a deaf ear as to what we, the residents of College Park East, value: safe, clean, and modern parks. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak? Okay, seeing none, or no one else, I'll close oral communications. And now we will begin our budget workshop. The proposed fiscal year 22-23 capital improvement program budget plus the 5-year financial forecast. And may we have a report from our city manager, please?
Yes, Mayor, thank you, and good evening, council, executive team, our support staff, residents, and community members in the audience and listening tonight. Just for a little bit of lay of the land on what we plan to talk with you about tonight, as the council knows, in discussion last Thursday night, there were some questions that some of you had, and we just, at the staff level, needed a little bit more time to go back and do a little bit of research. So what I'd like to do tonight initially, and that was with respect to the draft operating budget, is give our staff a little bit of time just to walk through some of those items, and then we'll see if there's any additional questions or comments from council on the general fund budget. We do have the PowerPoint presentation from last Thursday night that's available if we need to refer to that as well. Following that, then I will ask Iris Lee basically to walk us through the draft capital improvement program budget. We'll take questions on that, and then if at any time we need to take a break, 5-10 minute recess during any of these discussions, we can do that. And then the last item on the agenda tonight is a 5-year financial forecast that our finance director, Sherry Johnson, will talk with us about. So with that, Mayor, what I'd like to do is give our staff team an opportunity to provide some follow-up to the council on some of the questions that you had, and I'll turn it over to our finance director, Sherry Johnson. Sherry?
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and council members. First, we would like to wrap up any open items from our last presentation. And I do have my slides, as we said, available if necessary. At this time, staff will address the questions on parking on Lieu. There was a question, and Quimby fees. And I will have the Community Development Director, Alexis Middle, respond to those.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you for this opportunity to circle back with you on these couple of items. So to begin with, the parking in lieu fees, these were established for downtown, and over a number of years, a variety of different restaurants have paid into this fund, and they were agreement-based, so the cost of the payment varied by restaurant. It's quite a lengthy list of the different restaurants that have been involved over time, but they include Crema, El Burrito, Hennessy's, Nick's Deli, Thai on Main, Beechwood Barbecue, Faux Basil Leaf, and several others. So the projections that are in the budget are based on the historical payments for these fees that are established, again, by contract. And there were 2 projects that have been done with this fund. One of them was the Main Street parking lot rehab, which is fairly self-explanatory. And then the second one were improvements done to the Main Street lights. And this is when we changed out in 2013. There were formerly what's called Cobra head lights, kind of what you see in any neighborhood where the top of the light sticks out from the pole. And they were replaced with the more decorative lighting structures that you see down there now. With regards to the Quimby fees, I have some information, but I don't have the final answer for you. So what we ran into is, yes, there's a $10,000 revenue that was received in fiscal year 2021. Quimby fees are $10,000 per lot. So for $10,000, it is a lot split. We just haven't been able to locate which lot was split just yet. So I can tell you that's what it's from. The person that paid the funds doesn't show up in a contractor in the building system, so we're still tracking it down, but we will.
Okay, thank you, I appreciate that.
Certainly. And then there is currently a balance of $52,600 in this account with no current encumbrances. Previous expenditures related to the Quimby fees include the Zoder Ballfield improvements, Heron Point slope repair, Arbor Park entrance resurfacing, some improvements at Heather Park and the tennis facility there, as well as some improvements at the tennis center and a shade structure at Edison Park.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Are there any further questions on those two items?
In terms of Quimby fees, we've collected quite a bit for the new development on First Street. Did that money get spent for something?
I believe because they had to create a park that
Did we waive
that
Quimby
those fees
for
gets
that?
offset, yeah, because the fee is based on the idea that if you aren't building a park, then you should pay into a fund to eventually build a park, build some improvements, something like that. But because they had the park as a part of their project,
Okay.
is the difference, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alexa. We also had questions on PEG revenue and increasing positions. Finance Manager Elena Hong, can you respond to those, please?
Thank you, Sherry. Good evening, Mayor and council members. I'm going to first start out in the personnel. Staff has gone back the last 10 years, beginning fiscal year 2013-2014, to review personnel. From 2013 to 2014 through the proposed budget, fiscal year 2022-23, the overall increase in personnel is 13.94 full-time equivalents. The full-time equivalent includes full-time positions that were approved by council for the last 10 years and part-time positions. For instance, in the city manager's office had an increase of 1 full-time management analyst. The city clerk had an increase of 0.75 part-time and executive assistants. In finance, had a decrease of 0.69 full-time equivalent due to unfunding 1 full-time accounting technician and replacing with a part-time. Police department had an overall increase of 11.77 full-time equivalents. The increase includes 8 additional sworn officers and 3.77 full-time equivalents that are from part-time positions. For community development, the department had an overall reduction of 2 full-time. The reductions result in an increase in consulting services. As for public works, the overall increase is 3.56 full-time equivalents. The increase includes 1 full-time management analyst, 1 full-time mechanic, and 1.56 full-time equivalent that are from part-time positions. Community services had an overall decrease of 0.27 full-time equivalent. The decrease is the result of 3 full-time recreation specialists that were approved in the current year budget that worked fewer hours than the part-time that was replaced. And finally, marine safety had an overall increase of 0.27 full-time equivalent. The increase is the result of 1 full-time marine safety officer that was approved in fiscal year 16-17 and the reduction in part-time by 0.73 full-time equivalent. This concludes the analysis, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions?
No, thank you for that.
In terms for the PEG fee, I did do a little bit research. So the PEG fee is a state mandate for cable company to pay the city for the use of the public right-of-ways to support facility and activities for the public, education, and government access for Channel 3 that currently assigned to Seal Beach.
Thank you, Elena. There was also a question on the benches revenue. On that, we did drop a digit. The amount should be 10,000 instead of 1,000, so thank you for that. This will offset expenditures of 10,000, which are already reported in the budget. Another question arose about sewer revenues, and those amounts will be revised as we did have a reduction in fees, and the new amounts will be reflected in the proposed budget presented on June 27th. And just to let you know how the changes will be handled to the proposed draft, any changes either made by council or that we find between now and the final proposal, we will point out to you in a memo so that you're aware of any changes that we made. Before we move on to our CIP presentation and then the 5-year forecast, are there any additional questions or concerns regarding the operating budget?
No?
Well, just regarding the item that we are not including in the budget, the increase for the groups that we're negotiating with. I don't know if we should discuss allocating something in this budget, just so it's more realistic. That's up to the rest of the council.
I do address that in the finance or in the 5-year financial forecast. We can talk about it at that point if you'd like.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. At this time, there aren't any other questions? Okay. I'll now turn the presentation over to the Acting Public Works Director, Iris Lee.
Thank you, Director Johnson. Good evening, Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council, and City Manager Ingram. Thank you for the opportunity to allow us to present you the proposed fiscal year 22-23 budget. And moving along, there are 2 items that we do want to focus on tonight. The first one being the proposed 5-year CIP, starting from next year 22-23 all the way to 26-27. And following the CIP presentation, Director Johnson is going to take the mic over and will present the 5-year five-year financial forecast. Excuse me. So I do want to take a moment to recap some of the more the strategic planning workshop items that we talked about back in 2021, and just want to highlight a few items that and where we stand on each of these key projects. First off, with the tennis center, this is a project that was presented in December of 2021, where we provided a concept plan to remodel the clubhouse to include the locker room into the clubhouse and some site improvements along with some minor improvements in the smaller multi-purpose room on site. We're about 50% done with the design on this project, and it's moving along quite nicely. So the next item is some pier area improvements. This includes the second item that's noted on there for the restroom and other locations such as the concrete abutment work, 8th Street and 10th Street parking lot improvements, along with the beach area ramp. So 2 items were previously budgeted in this current fiscal year's budget, $250,000 for the restroom design, which is along the way. And staff is also looking at combining the concrete abutment improvement work of $500,000 along with the restroom improvements in hopes to take advantage of economies of scale and construct that concurrently. You'll also see that we're going to be budgeting the parking lot improvements and the beach ramp in subsequent fiscal year items that we're going to be talking about later in the forecast. The Pure Restaurant Feasibility Study, excuse me, this item is something where we're going to be exploring restaurant concept plans. We are going to be budgeting $200,000 in this upcoming fiscal year's budget to study what will work for the Pure area. We'll talk about that a little bit more as well. It should be noted that $1.4 million has been earmarked from insurance recoveries for this effort. Community pool. We have had extensive discussions about this item in the past and gone through some iterations, with the latest being the community pool effort on the Naval Weapons Station location. We did get the feedback indicating that it is on the higher side, so we are bringing this back to the drawing board, looking at the McGaw Elementary School site where we have our existing community pool to see if we could come up with a plan that will work for what our community needs are for that pool effort. And the Main Street corridor improvements. This was, as you may recall, about prior to the COVID pandemic in 2020, we did establish a steering committee to really guide us in this effort to create a vision for what this corridor is going to be. As soon as we were about to kick off the public outreach series, the pandemic did hit, so this was delayed. So fast forward 2 years till today, we are going to be reconvening the steering committee to kick off this effort once again, and this is going to start later this month. As you know, with the pandemic, Main Street has changed its use and will likely change its use in the future as well. So discussions about parking, alternatives, and parklets will likely be folded into this discussion. So with that, I would like to turn your attention to our proposed fiscal year, 22 to 27 capital improvement program budget. So this slide provides a quick snapshot of what we're going to be budgeting the next about $17.5 million in 22-23. Of the 17.5, about 11.5 is carryover projects, and $6 million is new funds that we're going to be introducing. A good portion of it, about $17.5 million, is going to be allocated for our water and sewer infrastructure. $2.3 million of ARPA fund is going to be used for our tennis center project. About $2.6 million for general fund. $2.5 million in restricted transportation funds. And when I say restricted transportation funds, that's the SB1 RMRA money, OCTA M2, local fair share, and our gas tax funds that will be used for roadway rehab projects primarily. We have $1.3 million of grant funding and $1 million of special projects. So we did talk about about $11.5 million of carryover money. So I do want to focus in on what we have done this past year and what we're carrying over as well. So we did complete 10 CIP projects this current fiscal year, and that doesn't include the O&M items operation and maintenance items that were previously taken out of CIP and moved over to operation and maintenance. We have 25 carryover projects, and that doesn't mean that we haven't been doing anything, but because there has been a lot of progress here. 9 projects are currently in design or in study, and this would include a sample of the Pure Restroom project that we just talked about, the tennis center, and the Lamson well rehab project as well. 4 projects are currently in construction, and that would include our Seal Beach Boulevard traffic signal synchronization project and our SCADA water sewer telemetry improvement project. We have 9 ongoing projects, and these are ongoing efforts, annual efforts that include our IT programs and our annual street rehab, slurry seal, sidewalk improvements, and whatnot. 2 projects have been delayed, and it's primarily because of coordination issues. Almond Avenue pavement is one of the examples, as you know that we have quite extensive work from the OC 405 widening project. So Almond Avenue will be held off until the 405 project along the Almond Well is complete. And finally, we have one unfunded project. That is the Sealway Storm Drain Improvement Project. Staff is actively looking for grant funding, and as soon as we can secure some funding for that effort, we will be moving forward with construction on that effort. So now I would like to introduce what we have, that $6 million of new program funding. For general funds, we have $220,500 that's going to be allocated towards the police department's new animal control services for capital outlay, and $200,000 that is going to be used for citywide ADA improvements. For Prop 68 funds, this is per capita, Prop 68 per capita funding that is allocated for parks that was provided to us by the state. The Heather Park was identified as a location to use this funding, of which $200,000 of the $250,000 is grant money and $50,000 is the match funding. We did hear comments from residents requesting more improvements at this location. However, We don't have additional funding sources that are currently identified from what the $250,000 that are currently allocated at this time. Moving on to restricted transportation funds. There is a heavy emphasis on overall pavement rehabilitation, and this includes both asphalt and concrete work, roadway, sidewalks, traffic signal, signing and striping for $1.1 million. And this is coming from the outside of formula-based funds that we do get annually. We have the Lamson Bike Trail Gap Closure Project that we're hoping to go to CTC for California Transportation Commission to get funding allocation requests for this. This is to add a Class 2 bikeway on Lamson Avenue from Seal Beach Boulevard all the way to Basswood to close the bike lane gap that we have over there. We also were successful in securing $200,000 of OCTA pavement management relief funding from, and this is federal money. We're going to use this for pavement rehab at the Seal Beach Boulevard at Northgate Road intersection. So $200,000 is federal allocation and $75,000 is our local contribution towards that effort. And finally, we have our Water and Sewer Enterprise Fund adds. $3 million is going to be allocated towards the construction phase of our Lamson Well treatment project. And this is one of our critical infrastructure to optimize pumping capabilities and enhance system reliabilities, especially in the drought that we're currently in. And $600,000 for sewer mainline improvements. This is a continuing effort for point repairs and mainline repairs. So fast forwarding to the following 4 years after 22-23, this is a snapshot of what we foresee, and we have the community pool project and Main Street improvement projects. You're not going to see a number that's budgeted in the CIP for this, as we're still working on the scoping effort right now. So as soon as we establish the final scope of work, we will be able to put in a number into that CIP projection. And of course, we have the ongoing ADA improvements, sidewalk improvements, street traffic, and some beach area improvements as well, which includes restrooms, the 8th and 10th Street parking lot that we previously mentioned, and the beach ramps from the beach area to up to Ocean Avenue location. This is around $3.1 million. Moving on to our sewer and water funds. From our sewer funds, we have about $7.7 million that is being forecasted for 23 all the way to 27. This would include some critical pump station upgrades, some mainline improvements, and some other SCADA improvements as well for our wastewater collection system. And water fund, which is a lion's share of the project because it is public health and safety, we have $28.8 million that is going to be budgeted for 23 all the way to 27. A good portion of it is going to be used for our well rehab projects. We previously talked about Lamson, and we have a few other critical water well locations, including Beverly Manor, Bolsa Chica, and other transmission main projects as well. So as you can see from our previous slides, the city has quite a robust CIP program, and a lot of it has to do with our aging infrastructure. Some of these are essential to the community's quality of life, and some of it is essential to public health and safety, where we sometimes can't necessarily wait for the pay-as-you-go opportunity. So staff is looking for alternatives to fund these efforts in a timely manner using alternative funding mechanisms. These 5 bullet points up here are not comprehensive by any way, but something that we could start a discussion on and try to actively pursue as well. Starting off with grants and subsidies. Grants, there are a number of grant opportunities that are out there right now, and we are competitively looking and applying for them. As you know, that some grant opportunities have a strong emphasis for disadvantaged communities. So we do have to be strategic about what we apply for and make sure that we have a high success before we invest into those grants. State revolving loans, a lot of money out there for water infrastructure, again, because of the drought that we are in right now. Quite a bit for water. 2022 rates that the state is offering is at an all-time low of 1.1%. It is a lengthy process to apply for these SRF loans. However, it is good for our long-term projects, such as our water main projects and, say, our Beverly Manor well rehab project as well. We do have municipal bonds as an option. We did list the Ironwood property also as an option for consideration as well. This property located in CPE, it was purchased in 2014 for approximately $770,000. It was earmarked for storm drain improvement projects at the time, and we're looking that there is an opportunity to take advantage of the real estate market and possibly sell this location and use it to fund essential and important storm drain projects that we do have. And finally, another item that we could consider is P3. Kind of a trendy item that you hear in the industry, public-private partnerships. These are long-term contracts between private partners and government entities, such as Seal Beach, for providing public asset or services. Governments usually provide the financing, private entities usually provide the delivery resources. This is not free money by any means, and we do have to pay through other charges and taxes or other revenue sources to pay back, but it is a delivery mechanism as well. So this completes the CIP overview, and would welcome your questions at this time.
Start with Sandra. Do you have any
I'm
questions?
not ready yet.
Okay. Mike? Tom?
For the general fund commitment, can you break down what the 2.6 million?
Absolutely.
And is the part of that is maybe for matching some of the projects that are in with grants or whatever?
Yes, so I would direct you to page 162 of our budget. And a number of it is carryover, just like you said. We are working on certain IT project efforts, community pool. We talked about the animal services capital outlay, some ADA improvements. Pier restorations, which includes the restroom and the concrete pier abutment, that was a carryover. We did allocate a small sum for Sealway grant preparation. We're continuing to work on the Lamson bike trail, and like you said, Councilmember Moore, that is a match funding component for the active transportation program funding that we did, program grant that we did receive. We do have $290,000 that's earmarked for the Main Street effort. And finally, we do carry over some money from the grant money that we received from OCTA to synchronize our traffic signals along Seal Beach Boulevard.
Okay. And you mentioned 200,000 for the peer analysis, is that right? Or was it 20,000?
200.
200?
Yes.
What is involved with that?
Do you mind?
Councilmember Moore, for the peer analysis, we're still in deliberations about what that analysis might mean. I don't have an answer for you today, but I can get back to you on that one.
Okay. And you can come back to me.
Let's see. I had a couple questions. Some of them may have been answered. Let me look. So for the community pool, the 100,000 that's in the budget is for what right now?
So we recently entered into a contract with Griffin Structures to conduct a feasibility study. Of the 100,000, about 60,000 has been earmarked or encumbered for that feasibility study at McGaw.
Okay. Let's see, and then tennis center, I've got that. All right, that's ARPA money for tennis center project, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. First Street Restaurant, it's got $40,000. What's that doing there?
So the money has been allocated for our commitment to the beach house restaurant lease. So this will include installation of our grease interceptor, providing electricity to the property, and I believe that I'm sorry, would you?
That's correct. It's largely related to the grease interceptor and an electrical panel that needs to be installed.
Okay, those are our responsibilities. And
That's correct,
everything.
yes.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. And for the lifeguard headquarters police substation, 60,000 this year's budget?
That is a carryover amount to continue maintaining the integrity or the maintenance of the building.
Maintenance, okay. Band-Aids, yeah. And for the animal control budget, is that for the vehicle? That 200,000 is for?
It's primarily for the
CIP is
vehicle, yes.
Okay. And the Proposition 68 grant, what exactly would be, I see the matching funds coming, ARPA, would that be, what would be moving forward in this fiscal year?
So we would actually be designing and removing and replacing the equipment, most likely in kind of some nature, and then removing and replacing the play surfacing along with it.
Okay. And Main Street improvements, it says pavement, hardscape replacement, outdoor furnishings, is that,
So this item will likely be guided with our steering committee's direction as well. We will be starting a series of public outreach also to better define what the scope will be.
okay, that's just kind of a general idea. I thought at the last meeting, we said some technology would not be occurring, but there's technology in the budget, so it was PD technology plus citywide technology, 250,000. Let's see, who do I ask for that? Okay.
Thank you for the question, Councilmember Starsik. For the citywide technology, 250K, most of that is for the cloud-based phone system that we're installing, as well as IT master plan, inclusive of the service ticket software that was mentioned at our last meeting workshop, as well as a potential for a city website redesign.
A website, that's right, okay. And website, okay. And then PD included some body cameras and other PD kind of stuff, sort of stuff, okay. Let's see, I had a question on what PMRF was, but I found out what that was. It's federal money for Northgate and Seal Beach Boulevard. Okay, some of the other questions I had were on water lines. It looked like to me that this is all seems to be future things, but you've got a, let's see, which were the first ones, 24, 25 for replace a water line, Seal Beach Boulevard to Basswood, and then we had between Basswood and the Lamson well, and then the Lamson well and the eastern property, city line, yeah, city limit, yeah. So that looked like most of that is still in the future, but that's coming out of the water capital fund. Okay?
That's correct.
Okay. Let's see. The Los Cerritos wetlands water line lining, that one is also coming out of the water capital fund. Okay.
Yes.
And for the Almond Avenue pavement plan, that 800,000, that's going to be paid for by OCTA agreement?
That is from our settlement funds, yes.
Settlement agreement, okay. And the Hillman Ranch permit, that I guess is in relation to the LCWA line. Is that only for a permit, or is that for restoration?
That is primarily a placeholder, as we've been having, before we actually budgeted the LCWA water main project, we've been having a series of emergency pipeline breaks and repairs where we had to go request for a coastal development permit from Coastal Commission. So that line item was to use for those emergency events. Now, when we do reline that pipeline, we could likely drop that.
Yes. We should be good. Okay, that sounds great. And then there's a water line improvement program over 4 years, $1 million. That looked like it was just sort of a ongoing, wherever needed type thing, or?
Correct. That is a similar effort, similar to what we're doing over at the sewer mainline improvements as well, that it is various locations throughout the city.
Okay, great. Okay, I had a question. Let's see, where did it go now? Not that one? Oh, there it is. Okay, on page 10, you were talking about the Lamson Bike Trail gap closure, and you said something about going to the CTC for funding. Is that possible? Did I misunderstand that, or was that grants or something?
So federal money, they actually require approval along every step of the way. So for environmental phase, we need their approval. For design phase, we need their approval, although money has already been budgeted.
Yeah.
And for construction, we need to say, we're ready for construction now. Can you allocate our funds to start construction?
Okay, so I thought that project was coming up soon. Are we just, what step are we at right now?
We are, I would say, 99% done with the design. We are working on our right-of-way certification, which has been preliminarily approved by Caltrans. So we are aiming to go to CTC in the October meeting for approval.
October for approval, okay. Okay, I think that's all my questions right now. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a couple of things. One of the items that is not being considered, and I'm pretty sure the reasons are that we've been sort of beat back and forth by Caltrans, is the median on Pacific Coast Highway. And it doesn't look like that there is any funding to put toward that. The last, we knew that Caltrans was going to, when they did their paving project, they were going to redo the whole thing, and then they backed out, and then there was yes, no, maybe. So I'm wondering, are we going to have to deal with that at some future date? The median, is getting uglier by the day, and it runs through our entire city. I don't mean to bring it up at the last minute here, but it's quite a large issue, and I have no clue as to how much it would cost to do it. I heard figures of $100,000 just to demo the areas of the median that are mounded, and the fact that you can't water anymore. And so it almost seems like it would have to be a complete design and build, not just, scrape the dirt and put some rocks and plants in. So, I'm wondering either to kind of put it on the table, so if we come to mid-year that there's good news, or something to be able to address this. And by the way, I just read that I think Caltrans is getting close to doing their repaving project, and they're actually funding like $2.1 million to do type 2 bike lane from Newport Beach all the way to First Street.
Yes, there was an article that was just recently posted in the OC Register about this, where Caltrans was able to receive funding to do improvements along PCH from Seal Beach all the way to Newport Beach. Not only does this include a bike lane, this includes traffic signal improvements
Yeah.
and also roadway improvements as well. So it's nice that they are investing in Seal Beach, so we do appreciate that. Unfortunately, we weren't able to include the median improvements in there. However, we are looking at funding opportunities through grants, and we are revisiting some Caltrans maintenance agreements in general as part of the 405 improvement project, and this may open the discussion for renegotiating the landscape maintenance agreement as well.
Good. And I had a question regarding the Heather Park. The 250,000, to be clear, is not coming out of the 477. This is separate grant money?
This is a separate pot of money, yes.
Okay. Could we get kind of a background as to where we stand on that 477? It keeps showing up every year, and I don't know whether it's restricted for certain improvements in College Park East or...
Yeah, I can just give some general background. It was before my time, but I have just a basic understanding that I can share with council, and maybe Shelley can fill in if there's any gaps there. But just for the council's awareness, so this dates back probably to 2004, wherein the council at that time approved a development agreement between the Bixby Ranch Company and the city, where the Bixby Ranch actually donated what we now know as the Seal Beach Tennis and Pickleball Center, that property, as well as $1 million. That was back in 2004. The development agreement actually stipulated that $1 million be utilized specifically for the intended purpose of improvements to benefit College Park East, including but not limited to the tennis, and as we now know, the Tennis and Pickleball Center, but not limited to just those improvements. It was back in probably a year later in 2005. The council at that time approved a budget for expenditures to improve the facility at the tennis center, and spent nearly $500,000 of that $1 million at that time on various items, which, as we now know, those have extended past their useful life, which is why we brought a project before you, because we had the opportunity through ARPA to look at improvements there. In 2008, so probably 3 years later, the District 4 council member at that time actually made a request that was approved by the council to move $477,000, so basically the second half of that $1 million donation from Bixby Ranch out of general fund reserves into a specifically identified revenue, separate fund balance account that's specifically identified for CPE improvement projects, which all of you know we have it identified separately in the budget, and as you now know, all of you know that now, is that money still available. So that's basically kind of taking us through a time frame from 2004 to 2005, when the council spent half of that money, to 2008, when the council at that time moved $477,000 from the general fund balance into a separately identified fund balance for CPE, to where we are now.
So, in a sense, that money has been kind of there? I mean, is there...
It's been there, but it's kind of popped back and forth. Gary Miller was looking at putting a restroom with it, and looking at, and that's still kind of where I am. At the time, when we went to a lawsuit against Caltrans, then that stopped, and they were looking at using that money. Part of it was used, and then part of it was replaced. I've gone back and have been considering, the restroom thing, but we also had this Proposition 68 money coming up, and then possibly some equipment from the centennial, and so
yeah.
it was sort of a moving target. It's been sort of a moving target. So the Proposition 68 money was in the 2019-20 budget, and so because that would look like it was going to be moving forward, I started using discretionary money on some of the other parks because I had two parks that were
Yeah.
sort of competing, and I wanted to, you know, since Heather is the most used one, I wanted to make sure that you took.
So, I mean, if,
So I could now, but I also was, also part of it was a little leery about Caltrans because they have promised some things in the past that didn't come through. And so part of my hesitation is that they're back in the oh, shoot, what do you call it? The previous project that did,
West County Connectors.
West County Connectors. The West County Connectors project, when it came through and did our bridge, they had promised and gave pictures and everything of putting trees to shield this big abutment that is right behind Wisteria. And so that, I think, moved to this as part of the settlement agreement. Tom's area, a landscape area, and the freeway ones, and the budget, I think, that was given in the settlement district agreement is like $100,000 for all that. So I figured that project, the city's wouldn't pick up that money. So I'm, you know, it's for the betterment of College Park East. It was going to be supposedly a community center, and then it's remained,
Yeah.
what it is, which is fine. But so what's left is restricted for the betterment of College Park East, which recreation's okay, but it hasn't. It's been suggested that it be put to
Yeah.
bike lane. It's been sort of bounced around, so it hasn't just really totally been sitting there.
my
But
only concern is that, I mean, how many years has it been in that account?
Well, the development agreement was approved in 2004, so we're on 18 years.
yeah,
And I
so
just for confirmation to Shelley's point on money that was expended out of that account, because I know, Shelley, you weren't on the council at that time, but the council did agree to utilize funding out of that fund, specifically when the city council chose to file a lawsuit against Caltrans and OCTA over the 405 improvement project. And once that case was settled, then the money that we expended out of that fund was credited back. So it's fully at $477,000. And I do believe back in 2008, during that discussion, when the council made the decision at that time to set aside that funding in a separate fund balance, the discussion was, the council had a discussion, and I know it was Councilman Miller's, or at least it was in the minutes when I went back and was looking at it. I think his concern at the time was the council had already budgeted and spent, half of the $1 million on improvements at the tennis center at that time, and wanting to hopefully see that money be spent in another area in College Park East for the benefit of the residents, given that half of it had already been identified at the tennis center.
So, a couple of concerns. Number one is that the money is depreciating. That 477 back in 2000.
Mr. Mayor, could you speak into the mic?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. That 477 is depreciating badly. And from my part, I'd like to see the money used in College Park East, and if it appears that Heather Park has an opportunity to have the 250,000 plus all or a portion of the 477 to really make an impact on the park, including deciding a better permanent solution for a bathroom. I would do my best if Caltrans doesn't sweep up when they leave to fight to regain funds to deal with that. But I really think the longer we postpone that, it's not going to be worth enough to.
No, I agree, and I'm willing to spend some of the money. My only concern right now is everything is so incredibly expensive, but there is a process of planning and whatever, so we don't know exactly what
I mean,
what will happen.
do we have any cost estimates to do a major rehab of Heather Park? I mean,
In the book, in this book,
I know that the
it's like
250,
800,000 from,
so we would have, if we used the 477, you'd have, roughly 700,000 of that taken care of.
something like that. This is from 2000,
Yeah.
sorry, this is from 2018, so,
Yeah.
I mean, the cost, it's just that the costs,
Yeah,
that's
I
an
mean,
old
but again,
estimate, so.
again, it's just going to get worse,
I know.
worser and worser.
I have been investigating a restroom and what that,
Yeah.
some of the other parks around us are maybe 3 times as large. I mean, it's a matter of not only money, but kind of space.
Oh, sure, sure. And I'm-
They are used for practice fields too, so it's, there, and
I
the-
mean, it's
and
not,
the neighbors.
I don't mean to oversimplify,
Yeah.
your dilemma there. But I think, if Heather Park is sort of the focus of the parks there, and I imagine that people aren't happy about living across the street from a porta potty.
No, but they may not be happy again.
With a permanent one?
With a permanent one, I don't know.
I
But
don't
that
know.
involves,
Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
it's probably 50-50, and that's been part of the problem all along, is that the people with young children would like to see it, or maybe older people, and then there's some that worry about the security kind of
Oh,
issue.
well.
There's, you also, apparently, from what I'm told, you have to make sure they're locked and unlocked, because homeless
Right. I mean,
is
yeah.
a real issue, and, possibly other things. So cleaning, it becomes there's things involved too, so.
It's not just how much are the bricks for
Yeah.
the wall, it's
Yeah.
going to be
And
somebody
the
has-
location depends on the installation, trenching the utilities and things like that.
Yeah.
So,
But I think that, maybe we can give direction to staff to start looking into, even bathroom facilities. From what I understand now, there's all kinds of new technology where there are even non-permanent bathrooms that, in other words, that don't require permanent sewer hookup, but don't look anything like,
yeah, unfortunately, the one we got, we had a very nice one for a few years. I don't believe it's been 15 years that we've had this one, but maybe. We had a very nice one that had a sink and whatever, but
Yeah.
because we had to change to ADA, at that time, this was the model that was available, and it isn't very
so maybe
pleasant.
it's just a good idea to, start moving in that direction
Okay.
and see what, that's just anybody else have opinions on that, but
Okay.
I'd like to see, I'd like to see the money go to College Park East, the sooner the better,
Yeah, it should.
because I think, the depreciation can be pretty debilitating.
It is, it's just some of the costs right now are really, really high.
Yeah.
And that's the scary part sometimes, like when I did my shade structure, it was $7,000, but the installation was $10,000. And it's like, there were
course.
brackets in the ground in cement
Yeah.
and.
I
it-
just put a
you
new
know.
garage door opener
Yeah,
up.
yeah.
Tell me about it.
It's just like, are you kidding me? So,
Yeah.
I
Okay, think that answers my.
If I could add to that too, I think, the cost may not go down
No, I know,
ever, so.
I know,
So
I know.
waiting doesn't help,
I
I
know.
think is what the mayor was saying. And there might be some other low hanging fruit you can get. You don't have to do the whole kit and caboodle. If you can do some things with the $477,000, at least we're getting something done, and there's some other appeasements that might be met.
It is getting all new equipment, though, is that correct? Is that
I think that, well.
the 200 and some thousand is
I
going for?
think so. It's just, I was trying to remember the cost for the tot lot was $250, $280, something like that, just at the tot lot. And Bluebell was about $250 or something, and that was 15 years ago. So I cringe because I'm like, I don't think 250 will do very much at all.
Do we have some idea yet?
Sorry about that. The 250 will likely replace something in kind. If we wanted to do something that's a little bit more comprehensive, having 2 age groups and 2 sections, expand the tot lot, do something that's more interactive and interpretive, it will be more than 250.
Can we plan for more? In other words, that use the money that is allocated to purchase new equipment?
It would probably depend on whether or not we decide to put a restroom in or not, because that'd probably be, when Gary was looking into them, it was, 100,000 or something. I'm sure it's double or more of that now. So depending on whether or not that goes, that would limit what you could do. But it is nice. Almond Park has 2 age groups so that's nice. Right now, next to the Heather Park equipment, we have the bricks installed. I don't know if that'd be in the way or whatever, but I think that's where they were identifying maybe possibly putting the restroom.
Okay.
So it depends on which
Yeah.
portions we decide to put in, and then
Of course, we can always move the pier restrooms
spacing,
up there, since we're building new ones. Well, good. Okay.
So I think the benefit here is you have the money that's set aside in a specific funding source.
Yeah.
So, at the staff level, we can take a look at, what was identified. I know that Parks Master Plan is 10 years old at best. At least we can take a look at what was identified then, and then come back before you with some alternatives, recommendations, assuming you'd want to have Parks and Recreation Commission feedback, or at least an opportunity for them to look at it, and that gives residents an opportunity to come and provide recommendations and feedback, because they should be part of, recommending what they want to see in their park. And I know we have a second half of funding for ARPA that we anticipate getting this next fiscal year, although I think at the staff level, we've probably spent it 5 times over, if that. But I think there's some opportunity here if there's direction, consensus of council for us to start taking a look and come back with some recommendations, then we're happy to do that.
Great.
Is that the
Good.
direction?
Pardon?
Are we given direction?
I think so. I think we did.
Okay.
We gave direction.
Duly noted.
Given.
We're directed.
Let's see, you have some?
I had some
you brought
comments.
up some
On
comments?
slide 3 and 4, are those costs shown, is that the entire cost or just the status costs?
This is
Yeah,
the next
that-
slide
yeah,
over.
Are those
The
like
this
250, 500 to 2.3 million? Is that
that is anticipated to be the entire cost.
the entire, to cover everything, every phase?
That would be 250 for the restroom and 500 for the concrete pier restoration.
Not the design costs, it's just
It-
the whole thing.
Does include design,
Okay.
but it doesn't include the 8th and 10th Street parking lot, nor does it include the beach ramps.
Okay. And then on slide 9, the slurry seal, local paving, arterial paving, striping, you said that's citywide? Like, I don't want to get into details, but does it cover like every district, or is it just kind of here and there, kind of hit and miss? I guess it's on need basis.
Thank you for asking that question. So every 2 years, we do adopt a new pavement management plan, and the identifications of the streets that we do put as a priority to use for funding is based on the priority that's listed in the PMP.
Okay, and then, not going back to Heather Park, but I was also curious, what does the 250 cover for that?
The 250 will, equipment in kind, more or less.
Does it just take
and
out and put
surfacing.
in?
Something that's newer, yes.
So, like the other parks that need equipment, or if like the surface is in disrepair or something breaks, it doesn't have to be on this list to get fixed per se, right? It doesn't have to be a CIP project, if you will, to get fixed. If there's like a bad, they have that rubber surface, if that's torn and worn and you don't need a CIP project, you can fix that.
So smaller localized repair for the resilient surfacing is generally covered under our landscape maintenance budget.
Okay, and then like, that doesn't prevent us from using discretionary funds too on that also, right, on our parks in our areas,
That is,
right? Because we all have a discretionary fund to use too.
that's correct.
Okay. That's all I have, thank you.
Thank you.
Tom, do you have some more?
For the parks, can you go into, that's 250, is that going to be each year for a different park?
No, the 250, $200,000 is actually a one-time Prop 68 per capita funding. So that is an allocation-based funding that we did receive from the state. So it's not every year. This is a one-time allocation,
Oh,
and
it
the
is, okay.
50,000 is a match fund.
Do we apply for that each year, or is it just a one-time?
We will apply for it whenever they have a call for project, but I'm not sure when the next one would be, though.
Okay, and that property on Ironwood, is that because that property is not needed anymore for the flood issue?
I wouldn't say that it's not needed. However, when we did do the feasibility study for storm drain, it would be a much more bigger take to complete the storm drain improvement project within the College Park East neighborhood. So to sell this property at this current moment in this market to take advantage of the high market prices, we might be able to do more with it for other storm drain improvements that we do need.
Okay. And yeah, I fully support the tech part of the budget.
Surprise, surprise.
For the second half of the ARPA funds, is that something we can discuss tonight, or is that going to be a separate discussion, what we do with that?
Yeah, we'd actually be coming back to you with a separate discussion once we've received the funding.
Okay. Okay, that's all I have. Thanks.
Councilman Moore, I believe you had some follow-up questions on our sidewalk replacement program. Iris is prepared to address that if you.
Okay, yeah. I've been getting questions from residents on how long it's going to take to fix the sidewalks that are uprooted by the trees.
Sure. If you're talking about specifically in the College Park West neighborhood, we have identified about 60 different locations. Some of them will require full panel replacements, and some of them will just be a simple grind on the concrete. If it's the latter, it's something that we will be addressing in-house right away. Concrete, as some of you may have heard, we do have a concrete shortage industry-wide. Along with a lot of other shortages. So we are working closely with our on-call pavement contractor to secure concrete to address those locations as well. Also looking for alternative material that may be promising for us to use as an alternate to concrete. It's more of a polymer fiber type material that looks and feels like concrete, and it's going to be used as an application to bridge the material versus removing all of it. We have done a demo of this, and it does look promising as well, so hopefully to bring back some good news.
Do you rate, like, if a certain sidewalk's worse, like really bad versus medium, and do the high priority first or something?
Absolutely. So there are locations that are lifted more, and those are potentially a higher risk and potentially a higher hazard. So we do take care of those locations first, and there are some efforts that require coordination with whether the private property owner or there are trees that may need to be considered for pruning or relocation or removal. So those take more coordination as well. So we do take all that into consideration, yes.
And I know when our joint insurance was talked about helping cities pay for some of that at some point. Is that something we've asked them?
I don't know if CJPIA is actually going to offer to help pay, but Assistant City Manager, would you be able to chime in on that?
Sure. Thank you, Councilmember Moore. We do work real closely with JPIA, and it is something that they assist many cities with. In terms of paying for that type of program, I don't believe they're going to pay for any of that. But they do
helped
provide.
a few cities a few years ago with the shaving, or covering that.
Yes, we're in the process. We're in discussion with them. It's called an RME, a risk management evaluation, where they'll go up and down the city looking at the different risks, including our sidewalk program. So we'll have more information on that when we have those discussions. And we'll definitely talk about potential funding opportunities, not just with JPI, but others.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I think we've answered and asked several questions, which is great. So I think we can move on, I guess, to the 5-year.
Okay. Thank you. So each year, the City of Seal Beach prepares a 5-year forecast of the general fund revenues and expenditures to evaluate the city's fiscal condition and to guide policy and programmatic decisions. The city uses estimated information based on past, current, and projected financial conditions. This helps identify future revenue and expenditure trends that may have an immediate or long-term influence on government policies, strategic goals, and community services. The model used to present this information is fairly new to the city. It allows for a micro approach in that it allows for data to be manipulated down to the budget line item. So while it is a useful and necessary tool, it does take time to prepare because of that micro approach. Given that the 2 individuals that worked with the model last year are no longer here and the learning curve needed to update it, tonight we are presenting totals with the caveat, this is a work in process, and given the uncertainty of times we're in, the estimates can and do change daily. Between now and our final presentation to you at the June 27th council meeting, the amounts will change. Included in the final budget will be 4 years of actual numbers and the amended 21-22 budget, along with the current proposed budget, and 5 forecast years reaching out to fiscal year 27-28. For revenue, a lot of these numbers are given to us by our consulting experts. With property taxes, we are anticipating an approximate 4% increase each year for the next 5 years. The changes in this revenue source are brought on by an anticipated 2% levy increase each year, as well as increases brought on by an increasing home value. Sales taxes, while the current budget is showing a 14% increase over prior year's budget, going forward, we took a more conservative approach. Year 1 is estimated at a 4% growth rate and future years at 2%. This is the same approach that was used in the prior year. Utility users tax, this is shown with a minimal growth each year. During the pandemic, this revenue source has been declining. 2021 actuals did show a 5% increase. This year we are budgeted at 0.5% increase, and the remaining years at just 0.1%. Transient occupancy tax, this revenue source was hit the hardest and is now looking like it is getting back to some double-digit budget increases. The 22-23 budget is slightly less than the 19-20 actuals, and the next 2 years in forecasting brings the revenues back to pre-COVID numbers. Going out, the estimate numbers are more conservative with less growth built in. Franchise fees, other taxes, licenses and permits, and intergovernmental. These sources are shown at a less than 2% increase each year to continue with the conservative theme. These categories will vary from year to year depending on various variables, and so overall a less than 2% increase should be fairly accurate. Charges for service, the current proposed budget would get us back on the pre-COVID-19 trend line and then increases slightly each year going forward. As a reminder, this is a category that we're working on with our fee study. Fines and forfeitures, this category is anticipated to increase about 3% each year. This is another estimate that is the same as last year's. Use of money and property. For this category, your previous director anticipated a couple years of declining revenues due to the use of your investments to complete some of the projects, and then back to approximate 2% increases in the last 2 years. This assumption seems reasonable and was used again this year. For other revenues, this revenue source is unpredictable and is shown conservatively at a 1% increase each year. Included in this category are overhead charges for water and sewer at $773,500 a year. These are not increased in the forecast. For transfers in, this revenue source can vary from year to year and is estimated at a 2% increase each year. On the expenditure side, for salary and benefits, there are a lot of unknowns. This year's budget does not include increases for 3 of the union groups, and the 2023 is the last year of the contracts for the remaining union groups, which are currently at 3%. And knowing that we're currently dealing with a tight operating budget, minimal increases of 2% were used going forward. The exception to the 2% increase is the 23-24 forecast, where we used a 5% increase. And we use this 5% increase to account for any potential increases to the 2023 budget and to make the increases going forward based on a potentially more accurate number. Other changes in salaries and benefits are the unfunded liabilities from CalPERS, as well as the ongoing or normal cost component to retirement. These amounts were taken from the most recent actuarial numbers. And lastly, increases were forecasted for the part-time salaries to account for the ongoing increases to minimum wage and the related benefit increases. For maintenance and operations, these were forecasted using an approximate 4% increase. Debt services is decreasing each year as the last of the general fund debt will be paid in full by 25-26. There's an asterisk on this grouping and the transfers operation grouping. In the budget, the debt service number is included as part of the transfers operation balance. However, it is to show the debt service component in the forecast, it has been broken out. With the transfers category, nothing has been input for CIPs. The forecast only addresses operating expenditures, and the bottom line will show how much is or was available to spend on your CIPs, as these are most likely paid out of your reserves. The category lines are included here as a visual that nothing has been added for CIPs, and they do not contribute to the final surplus or deficit number that you will see on the next slide. In addition, we show a $250,000 a year transfer to the Vehicle Replacement Fund. This may have to be foregone in some years, as it was in the current proposed budget year. The city is planning to lease all vehicles going forward, but this program is still too new to predict cost savings. The city, however, can choose to slow down the complete conversion to leased vehicles in order to preserve and extend the fund balance in the Vehicle Replacement Fund. No transfers have been added to the Information Technology Fund. This was started last year with a transfer of about $474,000. Per the reserve fund policy, a minimum of $130,000 should be maintained. As of now, the reserve is $304,000. Included in the transfers are amounts to Tidelands at a 1% increase each year. So overall, the annual deficits displayed here are very similar to those presented to you last year. We've already discussed the need for new revenues, and staff is always looking for the most cost-effective way to offer services. As I noted earlier, this is a forecast that is continually changing as more and more data comes to light. We'll continue to work with it until the final proposed budget is presented. In addition, this could be a great tool to help with forecasting at various times of the year. It is pretty labor-intensive, but if maintained, it could prove to be very useful. So this concludes our proposed budget workshop, and we presented all the information we felt was needed for you to make decisions for the coming fiscal year. At this time, we are once again available to answer any questions.
We'll start. It's okay.
Yikes.
So we'll go back to Tom.
Yeah, thank you for
I don't know what to
doing.
say.
It's a lot of data.
Thank you for doing the 5-year forecast. And my concern is, the next year's budget with the $451,000 deficit, that's something that staff will present options for revenue and ways to optimize things.
The 23-24, yes. I'm fairly certain that it's going to be a trend going forward to always try and present a budget balanced budget. As you know, we started this year with over a $4 million deficit and whittled that down to a small amount, $26,500, but we did definitely address that.
And is the reason it decreases the following year the debt service payments paid out, or that?
Yes,
Yeah.
that's the biggest change.
Okay, I don't have any other.
Thank you.
Shelley?
Just, does this projection include, I might have missed it, but does it include any increases in salaries?
So For the very first year, the 23-24, because we don't have increases for 3 of the unions that are out for negotiations right now, we bumped that one up to 5%. So the first year shows a 5% increase in salaries. The following years after that are 2%. And again, we were just trying to be conservative because we do have tight budgets, and these numbers, you could make them quite large.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
With regard to TOT, occupancy tax, at what point would staff recommend us beginning to look at the possibility of increasing the number of vacation rentals that we would allow in the city, not just in Old Town, or if it would be just Old Town? I suppose it can be somewhat significant. Can we break out the beach, Old Town vacation rentals in terms of what they contribute compared to the hotels, and do we have any idea?
That's a calculation we can bring back for you if that's the desire of the council. That shouldn't be that difficult.
Yeah, I'd like to see that because, I don't want to open up a huge can of worms and all of a sudden have more vacation rentals in Old Town, and wind up that it's only bringing in, $8,000, and that we've opened a larger can of worms. I mean, of course, on the other hand, I believe that hurts us with our RENA numbers. So, it's like, do we want to extend the pain on complying with HCD, or do we want to raise a few more dollars? I just don't know what the potential is if we do allow more VRB. I mean, we know they're out there, especially in Old Town. I'm not sure, up on the hill, whether they're operating anyway, and or College Park.
Probably not.
Yeah.
Well, it goes without saying that we know through complaints there's illegal vacation rentals that are operating,
Yes.
many of which are collecting TOT, and we don't have a mechanism for them to remit it to the city because they don't have an approved conditional use permit. So I think, the council back in whatever that date was adopted, or it was either a resolution or ordinance, I mean, it would be at the council's discretion to have another discussion about that, whether or not you want to consider
I'd like to see it.
rescinding the ordinance and having or resolution and having another discussion about potentially opening that up for consideration.
How does the council feel about having at least a discussion about it?
Sounds reasonable.
Find out what's.
Yeah, I'd like to know how much money, is it going to be worth the effort?
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And I think so if we know that using the measure of the vacation rentals in Old Town, kind of as a measure,
Well, how many are there? 10, maybe?
14,
14?
yeah, legal. And
Legal,
probably
right.
another 15 or 20 that aren't. And so if we know, how much the 14 are bringing in, you could double that and at least have a very good idea of how much more revenue you'd get. But as you say, I don't want to start something that becomes a huge controversy for the city, and the revenue that we'd be getting wouldn't be significant enough to offset the grief.
And we won't know that till we do the analysis and bring it to you.
Yeah, let's do
And
that.
I do think citywide it's more appropriate.
Yeah, I agree. Okay. I don't think I had any other questions about the forecast. I think the forecast really is great for both council as well as for the community to kind of have an understanding of where we are today, where we're spending the money today, and what are the things that we need to look at spending down the road, and what the financial future is based on, of course, what we know today. So thank you. Okay. Are we,
Any other questions?
is that it? Any other topics that we want to cover that would be ancillary to this or tangential to
Maybe
this?
allocating funds for a printing machine?
A printing machine.
Printing machine to make money?
Oh. I'm sure that we could probably contact some people that we could get something that would be quite close.
There are so many things in the budget that I would love to do, you know, and do it now, and it's just, there's never enough, never enough.
I mean, and the problem for us is that we're a small city by population and therefore by income that has to provide the same services and fulfill the same unfunded state mandates that Newport Beach and Huntington Beach and Anaheim and Santa Ana have to do, with a staff that's probably anywhere from, half to a tenth of what some of the other cities have in terms of the number of people. And I really would, want to recognize our staff for the amount of work that you have been forced to do and have done, in service to the city, trying to keep the city going and doing all of our daily business to make this a great place to live and be, and then have to also deal with the unfunded state mandates that, while the results may someday, we'll all look back and say, boy, I'm sure glad we did that. But at this point, it just really has made it very difficult for us to operate. And I hope the community understands that as well. Thank you. So, can I do this from just memory? It's time for adjournment. So.
It's on the back of your paper, your script on the back,
Turn it over.
the adjournment.
What? Yes, I
Okay.
figured that out. My son showed me how to do that. I'm now going to adjourn the city council to Monday, June 13th, 2022 at 5:30 p.m. to meet in closed